Though the ground may tremble and the shadows fall.
You have seen this story before. You just have not seen the truth. Hollywood, 1936. MGM releases San Francisco. Clark Gable in a clean white shirt. Jeanette MacDonald belting a hymn while the dust settles around her like stage snow. A brief dramatic tremor. A noble city singing through the wreckage. A swell of orchestra. A fade to triumph. America bought it. America still buys it. That movie is a lie. Not a small lie. A monument-sized lie built deliberately, paid for by men who needed you to believe the dead were heroic and the city was brave and the disaster was over by Tuesday. Forget Clark Gable. It is 5:12 a.m., the 18th of April, 1906. You are not in a tuxedo. You are in a damp wool nightshirt in a third-floor room of a 6th Street boarding house, on a mattress stuffed with horsehair, in a building put up cheap by a contractor who is sleeping in a much nicer one across town. The Pacific fog is pressed against your window like a held breath. The room smells like coal smoke from yesterday's stove, kerosene from the bedside lamp, and the faint sour tang of gas leaking from a pipe in the wall. You do not notice the gas. You will in 11 seconds when it ignites. Outside, the city is asleep. 410,000 people. Newspaper boys not yet on the corners, horses dozing in their stalls. Enrico Caruso, the greatest tenor alive, is snoring in Suite 622 of the Palace Hotel, dreaming of last night's standing ovation at the Grand Opera House. Mayor Eugene Schmitz is asleep in his bed, unaware that within 12 hours he will sign a piece of paper authorizing American soldiers to execute American civilians in American streets without trial. Fire Chief Dennis Sullivan is asleep in his quarters above Engine Company 3. He has roughly 90 more seconds of life that will not involve agony. You do not know any of this. You are about to, because in 11 seconds, 296 miles of the San Andreas Fault is going to slip. The ground is not going to shake. The ground is going to roll in waves 3 feet high, like the deck of a ship in a hurricane. Your mattress is going to leave the floor. Your skull is going to find the headboard. The horsehair stuffing will smell briefly like a barn on fire. Then the chimney will come down through the ceiling and decide whether you live or die before you finish drawing your next breath. Welcome to the real 1906. Now listen carefully, because you have been lied to for 120 years. The earthquake did not kill most of the dead. The fire did not kill most of the dead. The story you were sold about brave citizens and bucket brigades and a city rising heroic from the ash is a screenplay drafted by insurance lawyers and signed off by the Chamber of Commerce. The official death count was 478. The real number is north of 3,000. The bodies are still under the streets you walk on today. Hollywood gave San Francisco a song. The people who actually lived it never sang again. This is the 72 hours they buried, the tenements that swallowed entire families whole, the men with rifles who turned an American city into a free fire zone, the United States Army that made the inferno worse on purpose, the neighborhood the city wanted gone and quietly let burn, the patients left to roast inside a hospital with no roof, the mayor's proclamation that turned every uniformed man into a judge, jury, and executioner with a Springfield rifle, the mass graves they paved over and forgot to put names on. If you want the polished version, go watch Clark Gable. He is still smiling. If you want what they buried, subscribe. The Dark Ledge does not flinch. You have 11 seconds. Make them count. 11 seconds. 10. 9. A dog 3 blocks away starts howling. Then another. Then every dog in the city. The horses in the cable car barn on Washington Street start screaming. Not whinnying, screaming. Animals know things you do not. Animals can feel the pressure wave coming up through the soil. 6 seconds before your nerve endings will. 8, 7, the pigeons on the ferry building tower lift off in one black sheet against a sky that has no business holding them. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, the fault breaks. 296 miles of the San Andreas slips at once. 8 feet of horizontal motion in a single shrug. The energy released is roughly equivalent to 600 of the bombs that will one day fall on Hiroshima. The seismograph at UC Berkeley pegs at maximum and snaps its needle clean off the drum. Stations in Tokyo, 6,000 miles away, will record the wave 4 hours later. Right now, you record it with your spine. The first jolt arrives vertically. Your mattress leaves the bed frame. You go up, you come down, you hit the floor with your left shoulder. You taste copper. That is a tooth. Then the rolling starts. This is the part the films never get right. The ground does not vibrate like a washing machine. The ground undulates. 3-foot waves moving through the soil at 4,000 feet per second. Your floorboards bend like the deck of a Pacific freighter in a December gale. Pictures do not fall off walls. Walls fall off houses. The pendulum clock in the hallway swings sideways into the wall and detonates. The cast iron stove in the kitchen below you walks across the floor on its own 4 legs and stops in the middle of the room like a confused animal. The sound is the worst part. Survivors agreed on that for the rest of their lives. They could never describe it to anyone who had not been there. Not a rumble, not a roar, a grinding, swallowing noise, like a freight train running through a slaughterhouse. Mixed into it, brick on brick, glass shattering on a citywide scale, 12,000 chimneys coming down at once, and underneath all of it, a low animal sound that is every horse and every human in San Francisco screaming in the same key. You try to stand. There is nothing to stand
It's all
on.
gone.
The floor is moving
Everything.
in directions. Floors are not supposed to move. You crawl. You make it 3 feet. The chimney comes through the ceiling. Think about this for a moment. There are roughly 12,000 brick chimneys in San Francisco on the morning of the 18th of April, 1906. Brick was cheap. Mortar was cheaper. Many of them were laid by men who could not read the building code, hired by landlords who did not care whether they could. Every one of those chimneys becomes a vertical guillotine the instant the shaking starts. A standard brick weighs 4.5 pounds. A chimney drops 1,000 of them through a roof in under 2 seconds. You do not hear it coming. You wake up dead. The lucky ones wake up dead. Welcome to Hollywood's noble tremor. Now go south. Cross Market Street into the district they call South of the Slot, where the working poor live in wooden fire traps 4 and 5 stories tall. Built fast, built cheap, built on landfill dumped over the old marshes of Mission Creek. The dirt under these buildings is not dirt. It is wet silt. And wet silt, when shaken at the right frequency, stops behaving like soil and starts behaving like soup. Geologists today have a clean Latin word for this. They call it liquefaction. In 1906, on 6th and Howard and Folsom and Valencia, they call it Tuesday, the Valencia Street Hotel is 4 stories of pine, lath, and plaster on 18th Street. It holds roughly 200 working men and women, mostly Irish, mostly asleep. When the shaking starts, the building does not collapse outward, it sinks. Straight down. The ground turns to broth and the hotel goes into it like a boot stepping into a puddle. The top floor ends up at street level. The lower 3 floors are now below grade in the dark with their occupants pinned to their beds by the timbers above them. Then the water main on Valencia Street breaks. 2,000 gallons a minute pour into the wreckage. If the falling timbers did not
The
kill
hydrant
you,
is completely
you
dry.
drown in your
There's no
nightshirt
pressure
in
at all.
San Francisco,
We
2
can't
miles
stop it
from the
now.
ocean,
The wind
with
is
your
carrying
face
the
pressed
flames.
against the ceiling of a room that used to be your bedroom. The official count is 60 dead. Survivors said it was closer to 100. Nobody counted carefully. Nobody had time. Now turn north. Look at City Hall. City Hall
Careful
took
now, watch your
27
footing on
years
these
to build.
planks.
It was the second largest municipal building in the country,
We have to
crowned
check
with
the
a
register
copper dome
inside.
you could see from the bay, lit from below at night. It was the proudest civic monument west of Washington. It was also a fraud. Mayor Eugene Schmitz and political boss Abe Rueff had been skimming construction money for 2 decades. Columns meant to be solid concrete poured around, steel rebar were filled with sand, newspaper, and the occasional empty liquor bottle from the construction crew's lunch break. The walls were sandstone, facing glued over hollow brick. The whole building was a stage set in a copper hat. In 45 seconds, the stage set falls. The walls collapse outward into the streets. The interior pulverizes. Only the dome remains, weirdly intact, perched on a skeleton of bent iron, naked and obscene against the dawn sky. Photographs taken 6 hours later show it standing there like a skull on a stick, a monument to graft exposed at last. The mayor who pocketed the money is, at this exact moment, putting on his pants in a private home on Fillmore Street, 4 miles away, on solid bedrock, untouched. He will survive the disaster very comfortably. The men who poured his sand into his columns will not all be so lucky. A few blocks east, in his quarters above the firehouse at 410 Bush Street, Fire Chief Dennis Sullivan hears the shaking begin and bolts for his wife's bedroom. He is the one man in San Francisco who understands every cistern, every hydrant, every pump, every backup system in the city water grid. He has been warning the Board of Supervisors for 6 years that if a major fire ever broke out without warning, the city was finished. The board ignored him. The board found his memos tedious. He never reaches her room. The ornate cupola of the California Hotel next door, 3 stories of decorative masonry, peels away in the shaking and crashes through the firehouse roof. Sullivan falls 3 floors with a section of ceiling on top of him. His skull is fractured. His ribs cave in. He will linger in agony for 4 days, unable to speak above a whisper, unable to tell anyone how to save the city. The one man who could have stopped what comes next dies without ever being heard. The Mission District was built on a swamp. The architects had been warned. The architects had also been paid. The shaking stops at 5:13 a.m. 47 seconds. It feels like an hour. You are bleeding from somewhere above your hairline. Your left arm will not lift. The room is full of plastered dust so thick you can chew it. You hear a child crying through the wall to the east. You hear nothing from the room where your sister was sleeping. You crawl to the window frame. The glass is gone. You look out, and that is when you smell it. Smoke. Not from one place. From everywhere. 50 separate columns of black are already climbing into the pink dawn over San Francisco, and the wind off the Pacific is starting to push them inland, and you understand with a sudden cold clarity that the worst thing that has ever happened to this city has not happened yet. It is just getting started. Pause here for a second. You are still in that boarding house. Left arm useless, sister silent through the wall to your right. You can hear her, faintly, you think. You can climb back into the rubble and try to dig her out. You can also see 50 columns of smoke and the wind is shifting towards you, and you have maybe 10 minutes before this block burns. So tell me, what do you do? Do you go back in for her knowing you might die in there with her? Or do you run knowing you will hear her voice in the dark for the rest of your life? Drop your answer in the comments, be honest. Lie to your friends, not to yourself. Then hit that like button and feed the algorithm with real history, because the second this video stalls out, YouTube buries it under another Clark Gable retrospective, and the people who actually live this stay buried with it. We are not done. Act 2 is where the real horror starts. Because the earthquake was the mercy. The earthquake killed you fast, or it did not kill you at all. The earthquake had no opinion about you. The earthquake was finished in 47 seconds. The fire was different. The fire took its time. By 5:30 a.m., 18 minutes after the shaking stopped, there are already 52 separate fires burning in San Francisco. By 7:00 a.m., there are more than 60. By noon, Individual blazes begin to merge into larger blazes, and larger blazes begin to merge into something the English language did not yet have a word for. The modern term is firestorm, a self-sustaining column of superheated air that creates its own weather, generates its own wind, and pulls oxygen out of the surrounding city at hurricane speed. San Francisco is about to spend the next 3 days inside one. Hollywood loves the next part. The brave firefighter. The arc of water from the hose. The wet boots of a hero. Cue Clark Gable. Cue the strings. Here is what actually happens when the first hose company arrives at the first hydrant on the morning of the 18th of April, 1906. Nothing. The hydrant hisses. A few drops trickle out. The hose lies flat in the gutter like a dead snake. The Spring Valley Water Company ran 23,000 service connections under the streets of San Francisco. The quake snapped almost every one. The big mains under Market Street ruptured in over 300 places. The auxiliary cisterns, 60 of them installed after the Great Fire of 1851 specifically for this exact emergency, had over the decades been paved over by city contractors, forgotten by city engineers, and erased from city maps to make room for new construction. Some still held water. Nobody alive knew where they were. The one man who knew, Fire Chief Dennis Sullivan, is lying across town with his skull caved in, unable to speak above a wet whisper. The firefighters stand on Market Street with empty hoses and watch their city ignite. 3 miles west in Hayes Valley, a woman whose name has been politely lost to history is trying to make breakfast for her family. The quake has cracked her chimney. She does not know this. She lights the stove. The cracked flue funnels sparks directly into the wall cavity. Flame finds insulation. Insulation finds joist. By the time her neighbors smell smoke, half the block is gone. By the time anyone thinks to evacuate, the wind has carried embers 8 blocks east into a denser district of wooden tenements. History calls this the Ham and Eggs Fire. It will burn 30 city blocks. Hollywood will never make a film called The Woman Who Burned San Francisco for Breakfast. There is no Oscar bait in a skillet. By 7:00 a.m., Brigadier General Frederick Funston has made a decision. Funston commands the Pacific Division of the United States Army from the Presidio. He is 40 years old, stands 5 feet 4, and won the Medal of Honor in the Philippines under circumstances that are still being argued about. He has no civilian authorization to act. He does not bother to obtain any. He writes a note in pencil, hands it to a courier, and orders 1,700 federal troops with fixed bayonets into the streets of an American city. The note reaches Mayor Schmitz after the troops are already in position. This is by any reasonable reading an illegal military occupation of San Francisco. It will not be seriously questioned for 100 years. Funston has also made a tactical decision. The fire, he believes, can be stopped by demolishing buildings ahead of it to create breaks the flames cannot cross. This is a sound idea in principle. It requires demolition crews with training, accurate surveys, and the right kind of charges. Funston has none of these things. He has a warehouse of black powder, a smaller supply of dynamite, and infantrymen who have never demolished anything more complicated than a target wall. They begin. They blow up the Winchester Hotel. They blow up the Delmonico restaurant. They blow up entire blocks along Van Ness Avenue. Each blast does exactly what black powder does best. It scatters burning debris in every direction. Embers fly 200 feet through the air and land on rooftops that were not yet on fire. Every fire break, the Army creates lights. 3 new fires somewhere else. The Army was sent in to maintain order. By Friday, they had personally burned more of San Francisco than the earthquake had. Now smell the city. Burning pine, the cheap construction wood, the dominant note. Burning horse flesh, sweeter than you expected, from the animals trapped in collapsed stables along Mission Street. Burning hair, a sharp, acrid bite that clung to clothes for weeks. And a specific smell recorded in dozens of letters and diaries afterward. that witnesses
There's nothing
described
more we
as
can do
roasting
here.
pork.
We have
They
to
knew
move.
what
It's
it
coming
was.
fast.
They did not write down what it was. You can read between the lines. A block off Market stands the Mechanics Pavilion, a vast wood and iron exhibition hall, the only structure near downtown big enough to handle mass casualties. By mid-morning, it has become a makeshift hospital. 300 wounded lie on cots on its floor, some unconscious, some screaming, some with crushed pelvises and exposed bone. Doctors and nurses, most of them volunteers, work without anesthesia, without clean water, without a single functioning operating room in the city. By early afternoon, the fire is 2 blocks away. The doctors look at the building, they look at the wounded, they make a calculation no doctor should ever have to make. They begin evacuating the patients who can be moved. Then they look at the patients who cannot. There are perhaps 30 of them. Multiple amputations, spinal injuries, skulls open to the brain. The records from that afternoon are deliberately vague, in the way official records become vague when nobody wants to write down what actually happened. Several surviving accounts describe nurses administering massive doses of morphine to patients with no chance of escape. Other accounts mention soldiers entering the building near the end with revolvers drawn. Either way, when the Mechanics Pavilion went up at 3:00 p.m. that afternoon, it did not go up empty. A few blocks south, on 6th Street, a couple named Joseph and Edith Vino are pinned beneath the rubble of their boarding house. Joseph is conscious. Edith is conscious. Rescuers can hear them through the timbers. Rescuers can see them briefly through a gap in the wreckage. Joseph asks the men outside for a pistol. He does not have to explain why. The men outside understand exactly why. They refuse. They tell him they will get him out. They run for tools. The fire arrives 20 minutes later. The wind shifts. The rescue is called off. Witnesses on the street said you could hear the Viennose for some time after that, then you could not. The temperature inside the worst sections of the firestorm reached roughly 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit. Granite cracked. Steel girders sagged like wax. Plate glass windows ran in liquid streams down brick walls. Witnesses watched a marble headstone in a downtown churchyard soften into a slump. You do not survive this kind of heat by hiding in a basement. The oxygen in the basement burns out before the building above it collapses. You suffocate first. You cook second. Hollywood has never filmed this, honestly, because Hollywood is not legally allowed to. By the time the fire stops, 3 days and 9 hours after the first jolt, it has consumed 500 city blocks, 28,188 buildings, and a percentage of human beings the city will spend the next century lying about. You make it to the waterfront.
Officer, let us
You are
board. We've
alive.
lost everything.
Your
I have
sister,
my
you
orders,
have
civilian.
decided, was
Stand
already
back.
gone before the fire reached her.
All right,
You will
keep the
tell
line
yourself
orderly.
this for
No
the rest
pushing.
of your life.
When is the next
The ferry
ferry
building
leaving?
is somehow
We'll announce
still
it when we know,
standing,
sir.
its clock
Stand clear
tower
of the railing.
frozen at 5:12, refusing to acknowledge the hours that came after. There are thousands of people on the piers. Boats are running refugees across the bay to Oakland. You take a step toward the gangway. You see a soldier raise his rifle, and you understand in the next instant that the fire was never going to be what killed you. The soldier with the rifle is 19 years old. He is from Indiana. He has been in the Army for 14 months. He has been in San Francisco for 9 hours. He has not slept. He has been told by an officer who heard it from another officer who heard it from a courier on horseback that the mayor of this city has
confirms the
authorized
curfew
him
and
to
the
shoot
policing
any
boundaries,
civilian
Mr. Mayor.
engaged
Very
in
well.
looting, in
The city
obstruction,
relies on this
or
order.
in any other behavior he, the 19-year-old from Indiana, judges suspicious. The piece of paper that gave him this power was printed on the 18th of April,
Look there, the mayor's
1906,
orders.
at 3 p.m.,
They shot a
signed by
man
Mayor
yesterday for
Eugene
looting.
Schmitz, and
must
pasted on
get out of
every
the city
standing
before
wall in the
nightfall.
city by sundown. It is one of the most chilling documents in American urban history. You can read it in the archives today. You should. It reads, in part, the federal troops, the members of the regular police force, and all special police officers have been authorized by me to kill any and all persons found engaged in looting or in the commission of any other crime. Kill is capitalized in the original. The capital letters are deliberate. A man named Schmitz, who 2 years from now will be sitting in a federal courtroom answering for political bribery, just suspended the United States Constitution in a single sentence with a fountain pen. You take a step back from the gangway. The soldier lowers his rifle. You were not the target this time. Behind you, you hear the report. A man named perhaps Heinrich Heyer has just been shot in the back on Market Street. He was carrying a leather pouch. The pouch was his own. It contained his own pocket watch and his own daughter's confirmation ring, which he had pulled from the rubble of his own jewelry shop 6 blocks from where his body now lies.
Quickly,
there is no
this way.
investigation.
Bring the bundles.
There is no inquest. His widow receives no compensation. The official record will note simply that a looter was shot. The estimates run as high as 500 civilians killed by soldiers and police during the 3 days of the disaster. 500. More than the official total of earthquake dead. Many were homeowners. Some were children retrieving stuffed animals from collapsed houses. One was a deaf man who could not hear the order to halt. The shootings did not appear in the official death tally because the official death tally was a lie from the moment ink touched paper. The city had insurance to protect property values, to protect tourism dollars, to protect. Bullet wounds in American civilians from American rifles did not protect any of those things. The army was meant to maintain order. By Friday, they had become the disaster. Now look east, across the smoking ruin of downtown, to the 14 blocks of Chinatown. 14,000 people lived there in 1906. The neighborhood occupies some of the most valuable real estate on the American West Coast, directly adjacent to the financial district. The city has wanted it gone for 30 years. The city has lobbied to clear it, voted to move it, drawn up sanitation reports designed to justify forcing it out. Nothing has worked. The Chinese stayed. They were citizens mostly. They paid taxes. They had attorneys. The fire reached Chinatown on the afternoon of April 18. Witnesses recorded what happened next in journals, letters, and Chinese-language newspapers that the white press did not bother to read. As Chinese residents formed bucket brigades and tried to draw water from the few wells that still worked, federal soldiers ordered them to stop. As they tried to carry valuables out of family shops, soldiers turned them back at the perimeter while entering those same shops themselves to loot jade, gold, silver, and ceremonial objects. Photographs survive of grinning soldiers holding Chinese treasures the morning after Chinatown burned. The photographs are not in most American textbooks. Funston's demolition crews used preferentially heavy charges on Chinatown's borders, ostensibly to create fire breaks. The fire breaks did not stop the fire. They did not slow the fire. They did, however, finish the job of leveling what the flames did not. Within 24 hours, 14 city blocks of Chinese homes, temples, businesses, and family altars were gone. Within a week, the city's Committee on the Reconstruction of Chinatown proposed permanently relocating the surviving Chinese population to Hunters Point, a remote and undeveloped corner of the city, conveniently far from the valuable downtown land they had been quietly squatting on for half a century. It was only the formal protest of the Empress Dowager Cixi of Qing China, conveyed through the Chinese consul general, that stopped them. A foreign empress 6,000 miles away had to threaten an American mayor to prevent the forcible relocation of American residents from their burned homes. That is not a sentence Hollywood will ever script. The Chinese rebuilt Chinatown on its original site. They had to. They were the only ones who would now leave the city, walk west, through the smoke, past the soldiers, past the bodies, into Golden Gate Park, where 250,000 newly homeless people are setting up tents on grass that has not seen this much weight since the day it was sodded. You arrive at Camp 6, near the DeYoung Museum. There are no walls, there is no plumbing. There is one Army-issue tent for every 7 adults. There are no blankets that are dry. The temperature on the night of April 18 drops to 44 degrees. The temperature on the night of April 21 drops further, and then it begins to rain. The rain does not stop for 2 days. The tents are made of canvas designed for a different climate. The canvas soaks through. The earth beneath your feet turns to cold mud. Your wool clothes will not dry for 6 weeks. You will develop a cough on April 24. Your daughter, who is 8, will develop the same cough on April 26. Hers will not go away. You eat what the Army distributes. Hardtack, canned beef, coffee made from water that the doctors will later admit was probably not safe to drink. Sewage from the city's broken sanitation lines is contaminating the wells.
Look here.
Typhoid begins to appear in the camps. In early May, so does something worse. In late 1906, 8 months after the quake, the second great San Francisco plague outbreak begins. Yersinia pestis, the Black Death. Rats fleeing the burned down town have carried it into the camps and the new neighborhoods rising on the ashes. 78 people die before the disease is contained. The city denies the outbreak for almost a year, exactly as it had denied the first outbreak in 1900, because acknowledging plague was bad for property values and bad for the Panama Pacific Exposition the city wanted to host in 1915. San Francisco lied about the dead from the quake. San Francisco lied about the dead from the fire. San Francisco lied about the dead from the soldiers. San Francisco lied about the dead from the rats. The official total at the time was 478. Modern historians working from cemetery records, missing person ledgers, and Chinese family archives the city refused to count place the real figure above 3,000. Their bodies were burned in piles at Portsmouth Square. Their bodies were dumped into the bay, weighted with bricks. Their bodies were buried in mass graves on what is now public parkland, under no markers, in no records, with no names. You walk over them every day if you live in San Francisco. The city built its tourism over their teeth. San Francisco rebuilt itself in 9 years and called it a miracle. The miracle was the paperwork. Quick check-in. 15 seconds. If you are still watching this far, please click like right now. We are about to enter the darkest part of the story. Not the bodies, not the rifles, not the rats. Worse. Stay with me. You survived, not just the earthquake, not just the fire, not just the soldiers, the camps, the cold, the rats, the cough that took your daughter on July 9. You survived the lie.
We must emphasize
that is the darkest part. That is what they did to you that
But
nothing
be
in the
sure to
rubble
mention
could
the
match.
lingering ash
Because by
downtown.
1907, the city was already telling a different story. The newspapers ran articles about plucky San Francisco rising from the ash.
We
The
must
Chamber of
emphasize the
Commerce took out
modernity.
advertisements
Show no
in
signs of
Chicago and
recent
New York,
unpleasantness.
promising a
These
brand new
glossy
city,
proofs
clean
should
and
convince
modern,
New
built on the
York that we are
bones of the
fully
old one.
rebuilt.
They did not mention the bones. They did not mention you. The official death count printed in the bulletin in 1907 was 478. The number had been chosen before the bodies had finished cooling. It was not an estimate. It was a marketing decision. Insurance companies, which would have been bankrupt if every death and every demolition were honestly accounted for, signed off on the number. The city signed off on the number. The federal government, which had let an army general suspend civilian authority for 3 days without consequence, signed off on the number. Heinrich Heyer, shot for carrying his own pocket watch, was never officially shot. The Vinos, who burned to death pinned in their boarding house, never officially burned. The 30 patients in the mechanics pavilion were never officially there. And in 1936, a movie studio in Los Angeles decided the whole thing made a great romance. Clark Gable in a clean white shirt, Jeanette MacDonald
Fear
belting
not,
a
my
hymn,
love.
A brief,
world
dramatic
crumbles around us,
tremor.
we shall emerge
A noble
unscathed.
city singing
Hold me
through the
close, I was
wreckage.
so afraid.
America bought the song.
Though
The producer who made it became rich. The screenwriter who wrote it was nominated for an Academy Award. The people whose actual lives the movie was based on were already paved over, buried under the parking lot of a federal building near Mission Street with no markers, no records, no headstones. That is the true cost of the American West. Not the bullets, not the smoke, not the brick and the bone. The cost of the West is that the men who profit from the legend always get to write what happened, and the men who lived through the truth are paved over and renamed Mission Bay. The ferry building clock at the foot of Market Street still stands today. Tourists photograph it every morning. The hands no longer point to 5:12. The mechanism was repaired in 1907. The hour was deliberately corrected because a city cannot sell itself with a clock that remembers. The fog will roll in tonight over the bay, exactly as it did in 1906. It will look the same. It will smell different. The brick dust is gone. The horsehair is gone. The roasting pork smell is gone. The men with rifles are gone. The mass graves are quiet. The lie remains. Hollywood gave San Francisco a song. You finished this video. You did what 3,000 people in 1906 never got to do. You walked out of the rubble. If you made it this far, type the word survived in the comments. One word. All caps. That is the only way they get counted now. Then subscribe. The next Grim Reality episode is already loaded. The dead are not done with us yet. The Dark Ledge does not flinch. You have 11 seconds. Make them count.